All right, get ready for today's deep dive. We're going to explore something really interesting, like a chain reaction that can really improve your life.
Oh, okay. I'm all ears.
And you know what? The thing that sets it all off is something you probably haven't given much thought to. It's your alarm clock.
Really?
Yeah.
My alarm clock?
Yeah, or more specifically, ditching your phone is one.
Intrigued already. Tell me more.
So we're getting all this wisdom from a doctor named Dr. Rosa.
Okay.
He's got this YouTube video. It's in Spanish, but we've got it all translated for you.
Oh, great.
It's called El Primer Paso para Mejorar tu Salud in 2025, which means the first step to improve your health in 2025.
Sounds intriguing. But what's so special about a plain old alarm clock? Seems a little, I don't know, old school for like a 2025 health revolution.
Right, I know, right? But Dr. Rosa, he lays out a really convincing argument. He points out how most of us start and end our days glued to our phones.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, let's be real. Who isn't guilty of that?
Yeah, no, I definitely am.
Yeah, but he argues that this constant access, especially first thing in the morning, it could be a real productivity killer.
Yeah, I can see that. It's like we're basically setting our brains up for distraction before we even, get out of bed.
Exactly. And it's not just productivity that takes a hit. Dr. Rosa, he says it also impacts our mental well-being and even our self-worth.
Oh, wow.
Like scrolling through everyone's seemingly perfect lives online, like first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
It just sets us up for comparison, and that self-doubt creeps in.
Yeah. Like we're starting our day on an emotional roller coaster before we've even had our coffee.
Right. And there's actually a scientific reason why it's so hard to resist.
Okay, I'm listening.
It comes down to something called the variable reward system.
The variable reward system. Okay,
Yeah.
break that down for me. What's that all about?
Okay, so think of those classic experiments with pigeons.
Okay, yeah.
Researchers, they found that pigeons would peck a button way more often if the reward food was given randomly, like they just kept pecking away. Because of that unpredictability, kept them hooked. Our phones, they kind of work in a similar way.
Oh, interesting.
We're constantly checking for those notifications, likes, messages, hoping for a dopamine hit. And we never know when it's coming.
So we're basically like those pigeons pecking at the button.
Exactly. Like we're playing a slot machine in our pockets,
Yeah.
all day long.
Wow, that's a really good analogy. No wonder it's so hard to resist.
Right. So where does the alarm clock come into all of this?
Well, this is where Dr. LaRosa's solution gets really interesting.
Okay.
By swapping our phones for a traditional alarm clock, we create physical distance. And that distance, it's key. It's about reducing temptation and not just relying on willpower, which we all know can be a little flimsy at times.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's about setting ourselves up for success from the get-go.
Exactly. Out of sight, out of mind, right?
Right.
Dr. LaRosa, he even suggests putting your phone in a different room altogether.
Oh, wow.
Even the bathroom if you live in a smaller space.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, just that small separation, it can make a world of difference.
Makes sense.
Like cutting off the supply line to that dopamine dispenser, basically. And this is just the first step in what Dr. LaRosa calls a domino effect.
A domino effect. Okay, tell me more.
He describes this chain reaction of positive changes that can unfold from just this one small change.
Okay, I'm hooked. Walk me through this domino effect. What happens next?
Well, the first domino to fall is how you wake up. Dr. LaRosa, he's a big fan of traditional alarm clocks, especially the ones that, simulate sunrise.
Oh, yeah.
He says they can help you wake up during lighter sleep phases, which helps you avoid that groggy feeling, that disoriented feeling called sleep inertia.
Sleep inertia. I know that feeling all too well. It's like trying to swim through mud in the morning.
Exactly. Our sleep cycles, they go through these peaks and valleys. And if you wake up during a deep sleep phase, you're going to feel groggy, even if you've technically gotten enough sleep.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
But waking up during a lighter phase, though, it's much more refreshing.
So a traditional alarm clock can actually help us wake up feeling more refreshed and alert.
Exactly.
I like where this is going. What's the next domino?
So the next domino is all about reclaiming your morning.
Okay.
Without your phone, beckoning you into the digital vortex the moment you open your eyes,
Yeah.
you actually have time for something else.
Right.
Think about it. What could you do with an extra 15, 20, even 30 minutes in the morning?
Okay, paint me a picture. What does a phone-free morning look like?
Imagine this. You wake up naturally, feeling refreshed and energized. You spend a few minutes meditating, or simply enjoying the quiet before the day starts.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Maybe you make yourself a healthy breakfast
Right.
and actually sit down to eat it. without scrolling through social media.
Right.
Or you have some quality time with your family, connecting and engaging in a meaningful way before everyone rushes off.
Okay, I'm starting to see the appeal of this. It's like hitting the reset button on your day.
Exactly. Starting with intention and focus instead of diving headfirst into the digital chaos.
Right.
And that sets the tone for the whole day.
Yeah, I bet.
But it doesn't stop there. This domino effect, it keeps going, impacting your focus, mood, even your long-term health.
Okay, I can't wait to hear more about that.
Yeah.
Let's dive into those next stages of the domino effect. So we're starting to see how just changing to an alarm clock instead of our phone can really change our mornings for the better.
Yeah.
But what about the rest of the day? Like, most of us can't just ditch our phones completely, right?
Oh, for sure. Dr. Rosa gets that.
Okay, good.
Actually, he spends a good chunk of his video talking about ways to manage using your phone throughout the day.
Okay.
It's not about, becoming some tech-hating hermit. It's about being intentional, like making choices on purpose about how you use it.
Okay, I like that. So what kind of strategies does he talk about?
Well, he reminds us about all the tools that are already on our phones.
Right.
Things like do not disturb mode, app limits, even just turning off notifications for certain apps.
Yeah.
Those can be really powerful for, cutting down on distractions and helping us focus.
Yeah, those are good tips. I've tried those before, but honestly, sometimes it feels like I'm fighting a losing battle.
I know.
Like 1 minute I'm setting a screen time limit, and then the next minute I'm just mindlessly scrolling through Instagram again.
Yeah, I think we've all been there.
It's so true. It feels like willpower alone just isn't enough.
It can be tough, but remember what we talked about earlier, that physical distance from our phones?
Right.
Starting with the alarm clock switch, it's like setting up a new boundary. It shifts how we think and makes it easier to resist those urges throughout the day.
So even if I still need my phone for work and stuff, just keeping it out of sight when I'm not using it could really make a difference.
Exactly. It takes away that constant temptation to check it or get sucked into scrolling.
That makes a lot of sense.
Dr. Rosa, he uses a great analogy in his video.
Okay, I'm listening.
He compares our phones to slot machines.
Oh, interesting.
Every time we check our phone, it's like we're pulling that lever, hoping for a dopamine hit.
Oh, I like that.
But by keeping our phones out of sight, we're taking ourselves out of the casino, so to speak.
I love that analogy. So we're starting our day with a more mindful approach, being more intentional about when we use our phones. What's the next domino to fall in this chain reaction?
Well, this is where the benefits get even more interesting.
Yeah.
Remember we were talking about sleep inertia and that groggy feeling when you wake up during a deep sleep phase?
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Rosa explains that using a traditional alarm clock can actually improve our sleep quality over time.
Wait, really? How does that even work?
It's all about getting our wake-up time lined up with our natural sleep cycles.
Okay.
You see, when we use our phones as alarms, we're more likely to hit that snooze button, which messes up those cycles and creates what's called sleep fragmentation.
Sleep fragmentation.
Yeah, and that can make us feel tired and sluggish even after we've slept for a full night.
So basically, using a regular alarm clock helps us sleep more soundly, which then leads to...
all kinds of good stuff. Better sleep has been linked to a better mood, more focus, making smarter decisions, even a stronger immune system.
Wow. It's incredible how something as simple as changing how we wake up can have such a huge impact on our lives.
It really is. And Dr. Rosa, he points out that this isn't just about feeling good right now. These changes, they can actually slow down the aging process.
Hold on. Did you say slower aging? Tell me more about that.
It all comes down to stress. When we're constantly stressed, our bodies release a hormone called cortisol.
Yeah.
And over time, high levels of cortisol lead to inflammation, they speed up cell damage, and can even affect how well our brains work. It's like stress is slowly wearing us down from the inside out.
So basically, stress is making us age faster.
In a way, yes. But the good news is by making these changes to our lives that reduce stress, we can actually counter those negative effects.
Oh, okay. That's good.
Things like getting better sleep, being more mindful, having more time for ourselves in the morning, managing our phone, use all those things help create a more balanced and resilient nervous system.
So it's not just about feeling good in the moment. It's about taking care of our health for the long haul. It's pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah.
But I have a question, though.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about the benefits of using an alarm clock, but what about those of us who are like really attached to our phones? Are we doomed to a life of stress and aging too quickly?
Not at all. Remember, Dr. Rosa knows that phones are a big part of modern life.
Yeah, that's true.
It's not about disconnecting completely. It's about finding a healthier balance.
So what's the secret to finding that balance then?
Well, in addition to the things we've already talked about, like setting boundaries and using those tools on our phones, Dr. LaRosa brings up a more intense idea called a dopamine
Oh,
fast.
yeah, the dopamine fast. We touched on that earlier. Remind me, what exactly is a dopamine fast?
Basically, it's a period of time where you purposely avoid doing things that trigger those dopamine rushes in your brain. Okay.
It's like giving your brain a break from all that stimulation.
So that means no social media, no video games, no junk food. What else is off limits during a dopamine fast?
It depends on the person, but the goal is to get rid of anything that gives you that instant gratification hit.
Okay.
So things like listening to music, watching movies, even shopping too much or gambling could be off limits.
Okay, that sounds pretty intense. What's the point of giving up all those things?
The idea is that by temporarily removing those sources of pleasure, you let your brain reset and kind of recalibrate itself. You become more aware of the simple natural joys in life.
So it's like hitting the reset button on our reward system.
Exactly. And when you start doing those things again after the fast, you're more likely to enjoy them in a new way and appreciate them more.
Okay, I can see how that could be helpful. But honestly, a full-blown dopamine fast sounds pretty intimidating for most people.
It can be. But here's the good news. Dr. LaRosa says that even small steps in that direction can be helpful.
And remember that simple switch we talked about, using an alarm clock?
Yeah.
He actually calls that a built-in mini dopamine fast.
Interesting. So by starting our day without that instant phone stimulation, we're already moving towards a healthier relationship with dopamine.
Precisely. It's a gentler, more manageable way to get some of the benefits of a full dopamine fast. And it sets the stage for making more mindful choices throughout the day.
This is all starting to make a lot of sense. But I'm curious, how can we actually tell if these changes are working? It's one thing to talk about better focus or less stress, but how do we really know if it's making a difference?
That's a great question. Dr. LaRosa suggests paying attention to 4 main areas where people usually notice big improvements after making these changes.
Okay, I'm ready to take notes. What are those 4 areas?
The first 2 have to do with mental clarity and focus. He says people notice a real improvement in their ability to be present, and their attention span gets a lot longer.
That makes sense. We've already talked about how cutting back on phone use can strengthen our focus and help us be more mindful. But how do you actually measure something like that?
It's not about having exact numbers, it's more about paying attention to your own experience.
Okay.
Notice how easily you get distracted when you're talking to someone or working on something. Are you always reaching for your phone? Or can you stay focused for longer periods of time?
So it's more about self-awareness and just noticing those subtle changes in our mental state.
Exactly. And the more you practice being present, the easier it gets. It's like training your brain to ignore those distractions and stay focused on what's important.
Okay, so that's 2 areas, presence and attention span. What about the other 2?
The next one is mood and anxiety levels. Dr. LaRosa says that people who make these changes often say they feel calmer, happier, and less anxious.
Again, that makes sense. When you're not comparing yourself to others and constantly being bombarded with information, it's natural to feel more at peace.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this leads into the 4th area of improvement motivation.
Motivation. The key to actually achieving our goals. Tell me, how does this domino effect boost our motivation?
Well, remember how we talked about the variable reward system of our phones?
Yeah.
By relying less on that quick dopamine fix, we're actually retraining our brains to find satisfaction in other more meaningful things.
So instead of always looking for that instant gratification from likes and notifications, we're more likely to go after things that give us a deeper sense of accomplishment and fulfillment.
Exactly. And that increased sense of purpose and drive can affect all parts of our lives, from our work to our relationships to our personal goals.
It's like we're tapping into a more sustainable source of motivation.
Yeah.
One that comes from within rather than from external validation.
Exactly. And that's a powerful shift. It's about finding joy and purpose in the journey, not just the destination. But there's one more interesting concept that Dr. LaRosa brings up that I think we should talk about.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What else does he have to say?
Well, he talks about how this domino effect, this whole chain reaction of positive changes, can actually work in both directions.
Both directions.
Just as positive choices can lead to a bunch of good outcomes, negative choices can create a downward spiral.
A domino effect that works in both directions.
Okay.
Okay, now I'm really curious. What does that look like in real life?
Okay, so let's picture someone who always hits the snooze button.
Okay.
They start their day feeling rushed and stressed. Maybe they skip breakfast and then they immediately grab their phone.
Oof, that sounds like a recipe for a rough day already.
Exactly. They're probably going to feel groggy and irritable, which might lead to making bad food choices all day long because they have low energy and can't focus.
Yeah, that makes sense.
their work might suffer too. That first choice to hit snooze sets off a whole chain of negative consequences.
So it's like this downward spiral.
Yeah,
One bad choice leading to another and another.
precisely. And the more those bad habits get repeated, the harder they are to break.
Wow, this is making me rethink my own morning routine. It's a good reminder to pay attention to even the little choices we make every day.
It really is. Awareness is so important. Once we understand this domino effect, we can start making choices that actually help us reach our goals and live by our values.
So it's not just about willpower, it's about being strategic,
Right.
setting ourselves up for success by making those first choices that lead to a bunch of good outcomes.
Exactly. It's about creating a routine and an environment that supports our well-being physically and mentally. And you know what?
Right?
Maybe all those positive changes might even inspire other people around us to start making good changes too.
It's like a ripple effect of good habits spreading outward. We started this whole deep dive talking about a Spanish language YouTube video about alarm clocks.
Right.
And here we are having this really deep conversation about how our choices are all connected and how even small changes can make a big difference.
That's what's so cool about these deep dives. We start with a seemingly basic topic and end up uncovering all these insights and perspectives.
I agree. So what are the main takeaways you want our listeners to remember from today?
The most important one is to be aware. Pay attention to the small choices you make each day because they can have a huge impact on your life in both good and bad ways.
Like Dr. Rosa's domino effect in action.
Exactly. And remember that domino effect can go both ways. So be mindful of your choices and how they might be setting off a chain of positive or negative consequences.
That's really good advice. And don't forget Dr. Rosa's suggestion to switch from using your phone as an alarm to using a regular alarm clock. It's a simple change that can make a surprising difference.
Definitely. And if you're feeling up for a challenge, you could even try a mini dopamine fast or even a full-blown one to reset your brain and figure out what really matters to you.
All right, listeners, you heard it here. Embrace the domino effect, make mindful choices, and watch as your life transforms one step at a time.
Well said. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those dominoes falling in the right direction.
And that's a wrap for today's deep dive. Thanks for listening.